He was the kind of man who didn't believe in second chances, a self-made millionaire, a CEO who built his empire from the ground up with sheer ambition and no mercy. People feared him, competitors envied him. He thought he had everything under control, every deal, every number, every person. Until the day she walked in, his new assistant, quiet, observant, unimpressed by his power. While others tried to impress him, she dared to question him. She noticed things others missed, the flaws in his decisions, the cracks in his empire, the loneliness behind his pride. At first, he dismissed her. "You're just my assistant," he said. But day by day, her insight started changing things little by little. Meetings ran smoother, deals became smarter, and slowly the CEO began to see she wasn't ordinary. Then came the crisis. A scandal hit the company, one bad deal that could destroy everything he built. The board turned against him, investors backed away, everyone wanted to see him fall, everyone except her. While he sat in silence, staring at the ruins of his career, she stayed up all night, building a plan. She uncovered the truth. Someone had framed him, a rival inside the company, and she had the proof. The next morning, she walked into his office, eyes tired but determined. "You trusted the wrong people," she said, "but you still have time to make it right." Together they fought back. She negotiated deals he couldn't, convinced clients to return, and rebuilt the CEO-Broken reputation one call at a time. By the end of that storm, he wasn't the same man. The arrogance was gone. The silence in his eyes had softened. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, he looked at her and said quietly, "You didn't just save my company, you saved me." She smiled and replied, "Sometimes the smartest person in the room isn't the one sitting at the head of the table." Soft pause, emotional tone deepens months later. She left the company to start her own business, and the CEO, now wiser, humbler, became her first investor. In a world where power often blinds and money corrupts, she reminded him of something he'd long forgotten, that intelligence isn't about control, it's about courage, vision, and heart. And that day the world learned her name, not as an assistant, but as the woman who outsmarted a millionaire CEO, and changed his life forever. He was known as the man who never made mistakes. Millionaire CEO who built an empire from nothing, ruthless in meetings, brilliant in strategy, feared by everyone around him. But power has a way of making people blind, and he was blind to loyalty, to kindness, to truth. Then one ordinary morning she walked in. His new assistant, quiet, disciplined, with eyes that noticed everything. To him, she was just another employee. But to fate, she was the test he never saw coming. She didn't speak much, but her actions spoke louder than any words. She stayed late, corrected mistakes no one else dared to point out, and stood firm when others bowed down to his authority. Slowly, she began to see the cracks, the overconfidence, the manipulative board members, the people using his empire for their gain. And when it all came crashing down, she didn't run. One night, when the CEO sat alone in his office, drowning in regret, she walked in with a file in her hand. "You built this empire once," she said softly. "You can build it again, but this time differently." She had found what others missed, proof of corruption inside his own circle. Together they rebuilt everything from ashes, but something deeper changed the man himself. He learned to listen. He learned to trust. He learned that leadership isn't about being feared, it's about being respected. When the company finally rose again, stronger than before, the world called him a genius, but he knew the truth. The real genius was the woman who stood beside him when everyone else walked away. Music swells, she was no longer just an assistant. She was the reminder that intelligence, courage, and integrity can outsmart any empire, and in the end, she didn't just change his company. She changed his life forever. Every empire has secrets. Every powerful man has a weakness. For Alexander Reed, billionaire CEO of Reed Dynamics, that weakness was his ego. He believed no one could outthink him. No one could outsmart him. No one could touch his perfect empire. Then came her Emily Carter, his new assistant, fresh out of university, sharp, minded, and absolutely fearless. At first, he didn't take her seriously, but within weeks she was finishing reports before his executives, finding flaws in deals his managers had approved, saving millions without even realizing it. She didn't just assist, she observed. She learned how his empire worked and where it was bleeding. One day she discovered something, a secret account. Hidden transactions. Someone inside the company was stealing from him, his most trusted partner. She could have walked away. She could have stayed silent, but she didn't. Late one evening she entered his office and laid the evidence on his desk. "You're being betrayed," she said quietly, "and I know how to stop it." What followed was chaos, lawsuits, investigations, and the fall of those who thought they were untouchable. But through the storm, the CEO began to see her differently, not as an employee, but as the reason he still had a company left to lead. When it was over, he asked, "Why help me?" She smiled and said, "Because sometimes people just need someone brave enough to tell them the truth." Soft instrumental builds to a hopeful tone. That day he offered her a promotion. She declined. Instead, she walked away to start her own company. Months later, her new firm became his biggest partner, and together they built something greater than profit, respect. Because power can be bought, but vision that can only be earned. The assistant who outsmarted the millionaire CEO didn't just change his story. She rewrote her own. Success had turned him cold, every smile rehearsed, every word calculated. The millionaire CEO had everything except peace. Then came his new assistant, a woman who didn't see him as a CEO, but as a man who'd forgotten how to live. She spoke truth where others spoke fear. She saw the loneliness behind the power, and slowly her kindness began breaking down walls money had built. When he lost everything in one bad deal, she didn't leave. She stayed, rebuilt, and reminded him what purpose looked like. "It's not your empire that defines you," she said. "It's the people you lift while building it." Music softens, voice deepens that day. He realized the heart he buried under ambition was still there. And for the first time, he didn't just lead a company. He led with humanity. She was invisible in a room full of power. Just an assistant, that's what they called her, but she listened more than she spoke. She saw what no one else could. When the CEO empire started to crumble, she didn't panic. She planned. While everyone blamed each other, she worked overnight, redesigning the entire structure, predicting the next crisis before it happened. When the dust settled, the company was saved, and only then did he realize the quiet one had been the real architect all along. Soft inspirational music builds. Titles don't define intelligence. Actions do. She didn't demand respect. She earned it with vision, courage, and brilliance. The assistant who outsmarted the millionaire CEO became the legend behind his success. Hopeful piano with sunrise soundscape. When he started his company, he built it on numbers, profit, power, prestige. But years later, as age set in, he realized numbers fade. That's when he met her, his assistant. She didn't chase wealth. She chased meaning. She reminded him of the humanity he'd lost, how every worker mattered, how success without soul was failure in disguise. Together, they rebuilt his company's culture, one person at a time. And when he finally stepped down, he didn't hand over his empire to an executive. He gave it to her because legacies aren't written in balance sheets, they're written in people. She didn't just outsmart the millionaire CEO. She became his greatest decision and the living proof that intelligence guided by heart changes everything.